So welcome back everyone, and today we're going top to bottom with the new H510 Elite from NZXT, a more modern and feature-rich take on their exceptionally successful S340 Elite lineup. The idea here is to take the already well-received H500 series and turn things to 11 with integrated smart controllers, RGB all over, and even more glass than before. So let's kick things off with this unique mid-tower by starting at the top, where we were greeted by a single fan mount that comes, well, unpopulated with the H510 Elite, which is a bit unfortunate as it would have really added to the premium feel that the rest of the case receives. But follow downwards to the front and you'll find the backlit power button that doubles as the storage activity light, and next to it, the USB 3.0 Type A and Type C connectors, along with the combo mic and headphone jack. While NZXT does provide a splitter cable, I have to mention that the separate jacks would have been my personal preference, along with at least one extra USB Type A port, as the single ports do take up an entire header on their own internally. But it does keep the top exceptionally clean. Moving down the front of the case is where we take a big shake-up in the H500 series, as it's no longer just a solid piece of metal, but rather tempered glass with a nice dark tint, and that pattern wraps around to the left side of the case as well. Normally I'd break these parts up in explanation, but you really have to see it all together just to see how nice the aesthetic is that's going on here. And just under the glass is the base of the case that gives the appearance of the glass floating, or rather sitting on top of a stand. The front tempered glass panel is held on by a couple of screws that you can easily remove if you need to take the front panel off for whatever reason. But the side panel is held on by a single captive thumb screw on the back and is pulled loose from peg holders. Now kudos on the design that keeps it sleek and secure, with the bottom slipping into a slot into the case. The right-hand side of the case is usually as boring as it comes, but this time around they've integrated the air intake and dust filter into it. A slick design that allows for pretty good airflow, as we'll visit again later on. The bottom of the case has another air filter, allowing for more air to be drawn in from the bottom while being filtered, thanks to the included Air 140 RGB fans that are included in the front. The bottom of the case also has access to the removable 3.5-inch drive cage, as well as the power supply dust filter that is pulled out from the rear. If only we could have a side addressable dust filter. Oh well. The back of the case is pretty standard affair, and usually I would have grievance with the PCIe slot expansion screws being accessed from outside of the case. But I feel like they did a pretty good job here, thanks to the included vertical GPU mount, which doesn't come with a riser cable and sits suspiciously close to the side panel window, but that's a whole different story. The mount is removable with a single thumb screw, making for some of the easiest access to the expansion slots that I've ever experienced in any case. Oh yeah, and there's also a non-RGB air fan in the rear. Now that one is voltage regulated, so it's not a PWM fan. An RGB version would have been killer here, but other than that, nothing to write home about. Now onto the inside. Starting with the motherboard tray area, the case accommodates motherboards ranging from ITX all the way up to ATX, but there is a smaller version of the case if you generally want that. We see a return to the much appreciated cable bar with a much wider opening for the 24-pin, which is a welcome feature. The power supply shroud at the bottom is entirely perforated, allowing for installation of the power supply in whichever orientation you want, and still has the cutout for the graphics card power cable if you need it. The front fan mount is something I'm a huge fan of, with its ability to be removed for mounting replacement fans or a radiator, but with the Elite it comes pre-populated with the Air 140 RGB fans. Along the top of the case, where the missing fan is, yeah, I'm not too happy about that one considering its price, is a relatively solid and well-mounted addressable RGB strip. Now that did surprise me, because I initially thought it was just the fans in the front that were RGB, and well, it's not just that. Now with that out of the way, let's flip it over and see where the magic really happens. For builders, the backside of the case can make or break the experience. The H510 Elite delivers, offering up ample room under the power supply cage to slide your power supply into, and the 3.5-inch drive bay that holds up to 3 drives is vastly improved over the S340 design, since you can easily remove the cage for installing drives or toss it out completely if you don't need it. There are 2 drive sleds in the back for 2.5-inch drives, and if that's your thing, and they're located in easy to reach spots right there in the middle. The killer feature here for me is for cable management for the EPS cable guide, and I did not think that I would find this quite as nice as I ended up, well, taking advantage of it, as well as the 24-pin cable guide with Velcro straps. Now these made basic cable management a breeze. But what about the smart power box up there with the nest of wires, you say? This was something that I was actually pretty concerned about, but it actually turned into being one of the surprisingly easy things to deal with. It was stupid simple. I simply zip tied all the cables together as they were hanging in the case and plugged in the SATA power cable and the USB 2.0 header, so you'll need to make sure you have one of those available to do this, and then boom, I was done. But the killer thing was wiring up was the front panel connector. Provided your motherboard has a proper layout or a more standard one, so definitely check that out. This is one piece, meaning that I didn't have to fight with a bundle of loose wires, just simply plugged in the front panel header and boom, done. Now if your motherboard has an oddball front panel grid, they do have an adapter in there so you can use that if you want to, so don't let that scare you away. The CAM software was next, and I would lie if I didn't say that I was a bit concerned about using this, but in all honesty it's pretty great. All of the information that I needed was easily accessible, and I got right into customizing things right away and set everything to silent and purple. I don't know, maybe RGB's lost on me, but I prefer a static color, but then again, RGB does allow me to pick that and change it if I so choose to, so count that as a win in my book. So I did take note to record some thermal measurements because I was curious as to how this case performs in that sense, because it's so much smaller and appears a bit more restrictive than the Cooler Master H500P that I've been using. But real quick, just to get this, the main system specs that I was using for all this was my Ryzen 7 1700 at 3.8 gigahertz with a Cooler Master Master Air 4 with push-pull configuration on an X370 ROG Crosshair 6 motherboard. Almost had forgot what that was. And an RTX 2070 Strix. And it turns out, even on the silent preset, it's not much warmer when either the GPU or the CPU is under load, but combine them and the H510 Elite is a tad warmer. But it's really nothing to worry about. So to wrap it up, the NZXT H510 Elite takes the H500 series and puts a crown on it by offering a gorgeous case that performs well and has features to flaunt. Not a big fan of the lack of the top fan and the non-RGB fan in the rear, as well as the limited front top panel I/O, especially for a case in this price point. And that's where this one will get you. See, if you're here in the US of A, get ready to shell out around $169.99 for this bad boy. Everyone else around the world should be able to knock off about $20 for the asking price, as we're here picking up the tab for the tariffs. Well, is it worth it? Hard to say. The core of the case can be had for nearly $100 less, but it's very, very basic, and this one has a gorgeous tempered glass on the front, along with the better RGB fans in the front, and a nice RGB strip in the top, along with the new Smart Power Device V2, and all of these combined make for one of the most builder-friendly experiences that I've ever had to date. And that's worth a fair penny in my book. You'll just have to ask yourself, is it worth it for that convenience for you? Well guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case, and what are you using for your daily case, and have you even considered changing it out? Love to hear those comments down in the comment section below. This has been Keith with WCCF Tech TV. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so that we don't miss you in the next one.